Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I am Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers, and the first half of the Diamondbacks 2025 season is officially over. Jack, the Diamondbacks managed to salvage the finale of their series against the Angels, but suffice it to say, their first half did not end well.
I've always had a problem with how 95 games is the half of a 162 game season. That aside,
The math doesn't quite check out.
but that's what everyone calls it, obviously. It was extremely disappointing, and it was disappointing right up into the end of the first half.
Tough game for the Diamondbacks on Friday, of course, as they got walked off. Had an opportunity. It was their third consecutive loss by one run. D-backs have not fared well in one-run games whatsoever. And on Saturday, I guess you could say the silver lining is that they didn't lose by one run, but not great when you lose by five either. D-backs lose in somewhat of a blowout fashion as Zac Gallen was not sharp and the bullpen behind him was not great either. But today, Jack, we did see the D-backs bounce back. Merrill Kelly struggled with his command a bit in this game. He did have 4 walks, but he also only allowed 1 run and paved the way for a much-needed Diamondbacks victory.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a kissing your sister type victory at the end of the day. I mean, they needed to win 2 of 3 or sweep. It was really quite stunning to hear Torey Lovello talking about needing to sweep a series prior to. We'll kind of touch on that a little later. This wasn't exactly I guess it was just kind of underwhelming to finally win a game, in a finale. One thing that stood out to me on the series overall, real quickly, was just the fact that after all the positive vibes with the rotation and getting deep in games and throwing quality starts, except for Eduardo Rodriguez, they got 4 innings from Ryan Nelson, 5 from Zach, and 5 from Merrill. They got 14 innings in 3 starts from their starting pitching, which is, not very good. And that left a lot of innings on the table for the bullpen. It cost them in game 1 and game 2. It didn't cost them in game 3, though. The bullpen was very good in game 3.
Looking at some takeaways from the series, yeah, you mentioned the rotation as a whole was not great. Merrill Kelly, as we said, was solid in the Sunday game, but he didn't pitch deep into the game. And then Ryan Nelson, a rare poor outing from him on Friday. It was somewhat startling to see him struggle as much as he did. He gave up 4 runs in the first inning of that game, which is as many runs as he allowed in his previous 3 starts combined, which was just crazy to see. He had 4 walks in that game to 1 strikeout. The fastball command that we're used to seeing from him, the excellent fastball command we're used to seeing, just wasn't there. And then Zac Gallen, which I think is quite relevant to the conversation we're about to have. As some people might have seen, there's a report floating out there that the Diamondbacks have basically declared themselves sellers. We're going to get into that more shortly. But Zac Gallen, Jack, if the Diamondbacks are indeed selling, I mean, this is someone that you would love to see pitch pretty well here in the next few weeks, as I think he could be one of the most desirable pitchers on the market if he shows that he's kind of gotten past the struggles that he had in the first few months of the season. He had 2 really good starts in a row against the Giants and the Padres. And then on Saturday, he looked a lot more like the pitcher that he's been for much of this season.
Yeah, I mean, this was another outing where he wasn't actually as wild. He didn't have as much trouble finding the strike zone. He walked 2. Those both came early in the first part of the game, first inning, I believe. But beyond that, it's just a lot of hard contact. He just got hit. I mean, the 8 hits, were mostly hard hit balls, and that's what we're getting from Zac Gallen on a semi-regular basis. It looked like he'd found a way to keep people off the barrel, but not so much in that game.
Other notes from the series, Eugenio Suárez did hit home run number 30, and then shortly thereafter, home run number 31 as well. Both of those came in the Saturday game of the series. It is wild, Jack, I mean, last year people were impressed and celebrating the fact that Suárez finished the year with 30 home runs, given the way that he started the season. I mean, it was genuinely impressive, but for him to come back in 2025 and hit 30 home runs before the All-Star break, now 31 home runs, I mean, this is just crazy what he's been able to do from a power standpoint, dating back basically a full year at this point.
It's phenomenal, and it's just unbelievable that he's not in the home run derby. I mean, what a missed opportunity for Major League Baseball. The ultimate fun guy for what's supposed to be a fun event. I mean,
Yeah.
who's more fun to be around than Eugenio Suárez? It's just stunning that Major League Baseball whiffed on this so hard. I mean, we can argue all day long about, okay, he's got 31 home runs. What are guys with 17 or 20 homers or whatever doing in there before him? But beyond that, it's supposed to be a fun event. And he's just got so much personality. I don't understand it. Major League Baseball just really whiffed on this. His teammates really came to his defense. They were pissed. Geraldo Perdomo, I think he was quoted as saying, well, Major League Baseball just does whatever it wants. I think they're also kind of referencing Mizorowski getting
Yeah,
into
I was going to say.
so there's that. And we could rant about this for quite a while. I think everybody that's listening to this feels exactly the same way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Andrew Saalfrank, also worth noting that he has returned to the Arizona Diamondbacks after, of course, the year-long suspension due to a sports betting incident or incidents. So he is now back with the team. He threw 2 scoreless innings in his first game back. And Jack, that was good to see. This bullpen certainly can use his help. That's for sure.
And the best thing was he threw 21 of 27 strikes. I mean, the
Yeah,
problem with Andrew Saalfrank prior to all of the issues that got him suspended was that he wasn't throwing strikes and he was walking guys. I mean, you go back to the postseason in 23, he walked 7 guys in the NLCS out of 12 batters faced. And that kind of finally caught up with him. Like prior to that, there were a few walks in there as well, but he worked around them. But by the time we got to the World Series, of course, he was in garbage time. So, he started off in 24. He didn't have a great springs. When he did get a chance in the majors, he got bombed, got sent down, and then got suspended, which he knew about before the season even started. So he
right.
was pitching and trying to, make the team and perform with all of that hanging over his head. So mentally, you can see where that would have been a detriment, perhaps, to his performance. However, if Andrew Saalfrank is throwing strikes and got his curveball working, then he could be a useful pitcher for them.
Well, the Diamondbacks finish the first half, the quote unquote first half of the season with a 47-50 record. It is certainly not where they wanted to be at this point in the year. And we are going to jump into the conversation we alluded to earlier about the Diamondbacks potentially declaring themselves sellers. There is a report out. It appears that is the direction they are headed. What will that look like? We're going to get into all of that on the other side of this break.
Scott, you have a Built Rewards card, right?
I do, Kratz. I pay a lot of money in rent, and now I get something for that. There's no cost to join, and just by paying rent, you unlock flexible points that can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and much more. When you pay rent through Built, you unlock 2 powerful benefits. First, you earn one of the industry's most valuable points on rent every month. No matter where you live or where your landlord is, your rent now works for you, and you gain access to exclusive neighborhood benefits in your city. Built's neighborhood benefits are things like extra points on dining out, complimentary post-workout shakes, and much more. Unique experiences that only Built members can access. And when you're ready to travel, Built points can be converted to your favorite miles and hotel points around the world, meaning your rent can literally take you places. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, what are you waiting for? Start paying rent through Built and take advantage of your neighborhood benefits by going to joinbuilt.com/foul. That's joinbilt.com/FOUL. Make sure to use our URL so that they know we sent you.
Well, Jack, our good friend Bob Nightingale over at USA Today published a story on Sunday morning that had a whole lot of notes, news and notes from around the league. But from the Diamondbacks' perspective, there was just a quick note toward the bottom of the story that is quite relevant. It says the Arizona Diamondbacks muddling along around 500 will definitely be selling at the trade deadline, according to rival executives, believing they have no choice if they want to compete in 2026. I don't see a world where they don't sell. one GM told Bob Nightingale. Nightingale went on to say that the D-backs are making Zac Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eugenio Suárez, and Josh Naylor available in trades. On one hand, Jack, this is not very surprising. The Diamondbacks are now 5.5 games out of the third wildcard spot. It's felt like things were trending in this direction for a while. But on the other hand, you maybe figured it would take a little longer. Maybe this report would be out on July 27th or July 28th rather than before the All-Star break.
Yeah. A couple of things, so just the day before, I wrote an article saying that, in my opinion, the Diamondbacks certainly would not be aggressive buyers at the deadline. And I based that on several things. Mike Hazen's own comments about what he expected from the team and where they needed to be, because he said that, look, it's more about how many teams you're behind and how far behind you are. He was asked on Arizona Sports Radio, how many wins do they need to get to? And he didn't tie it to a win. He just said it's all about how many games back and how many teams we trail. And that number has been 5 to 6 games for a while now. And they can't seem to get over any teams. They're trailing 4 teams. The second thing, at the beginning of the Angels series, Torey Lovullo, who always is one step, 1 foot in front of the other, one game at a time. I mean, he lives by that. Publicly. I mean, not that, of course, as a manager, he's planning for the future and the rest of the series, and he's got to think about everything in advance and 3 weeks out on the schedule, how they're going to pitch and all of that. So there's all that strategic planning. But when it comes to motivating players and when it comes to talking to the public, he never, ever in 7 years of covering him has allowed himself to get ahead of himself. And all of a sudden he's out there saying, yeah, we need to sweep the Angels.
Yeah.
I can't emphasize how big a deal it is to hear Torey say that. I mean, you've covered him almost as long as I have, and he just never talks like that. So that's what precipitated me writing the fact that, yeah, they're not going to buy. I mean, the fact that they lost those first 2 games clearly put him in a non-buy situation. So it didn't surprise me totally when Bob said what he said the next day about the fact that they've actually already become sellers. Now, the last thing I'll say on this was, of course, pregame, Torey said, that's all speculation.
Yeah, which I don't know if I fully believe that. I mean, I guess on one hand, you could read this report as the Diamondbacks are making those players available. Available does not mean that they are necessarily going to be traded, right? That would not be the correct way to read this. And it's also worth noting that Ken Rosenthal came out with a report on Friday saying that the Diamondbacks would not trade both Zac Gallen and Merrill Kelly, that they would only trade one or the other because they just don't have the young pitching to step in and take their places. And that is something that we've talked about on this show, that sure, you're out of the race. You want to maximize the return at the deadline, go all in, trade everyone. But who is taking those rotation spots? Are you bringing Bryce Jarvis and Anthony DeSclafani into the rotation at that point? We know how competitive Mike Hazen is, and it's just hard to imagine him punting, frankly. I mean, that's what it would. I mean, if you replace Merrill Kelly and Zac Gallen with, those types of players, it's just going to be really hard to look at this team and be like, yeah, we're still in it. We're still giving ourselves a shot if the D-backs were to go that route. So, yeah, I don't think this doesn't mean that the Diamondbacks are necessarily trading those guys. And on one level, I would be kind of surprised at this point if those players weren't at least available. So from that standpoint, this report really isn't shocking at all.
It just depends on who makes the best offer and where the value is. And we've talked about this as well. Do you hold on to Zac Gallen because he has the qualifying offer? The Diamondbacks just got a 29th round pick and a pretty good pitcher in Patrick Forbes, thanks to Christian Walker rejecting a qualifying offer and signing with the Astros. So there's that value to consider to maybe hold on to Zac Gallen. Maybe it's Merrill Kelly that gets traded. A lot of people have been thinking and saying, well, Merrill Kelly, he likes it here in Arizona. the Diamondbacks should extend him, or maybe they can trade him and bring him back. Just that doesn't happen very much.
Yeah.
Just very seldom happens where a guy gets traded and then ends up re-signing with the team that traded him away. There's just something about that not that it never happens. I'm sure, there's a few examples in the not too recent history, but it's not that common. This is different than, becoming a free agent and then re-signing with the team that you were just a free agent with. For example, like what happened with Lourdes or Randall Grichuk this year. That's a different scenario than trading a guy away and then signing him back. So, like you said, they'll probably trade out of those 4 players. I'm really counting 5. I'm including Grichuk, even though Bob didn't. Out of those 5 players, I would say one of those 5 getting traded, I'd lay 95% odds. 2 of those 5, probably a good 60, 70%. More than 2 is a coin flip at best. 3 or 4, probably pretty low odds, like you said. They're not going to strip it down that badly.
Which I think,
unless they just get ridiculous offers that they can't say.
I think that raises a question of like, if you are in a situation where your playoff odds are 10% at this point, and you are going to sell and make these guys available at the deadline, does it make sense to stop short of selling all the way? Like what are your chances of actually going somewhere this year if you trade Zac Gallen and Josh Naylor, but you keep Geno Suárez and Merrill Kelly? Like, your odds at that point are going to be lower than they are right now, and they're already not very good. So I think there's a case to be made that maybe the Diamondbacks, as painful as it would be and as ugly as some of the games in the second half might be without these guys, maybe the best thing for this team is just to kind of embrace that and fully punt on this 2025 season. None of these guys are coming back next year anyway, at least not under their current contracts. You made a good point that if you trade someone, it probably lessens the probability of them coming back. But I think there's a case to be made, Jack, that the best move is just to go all in selling. It's going to be ugly, but try to get everything that you possibly can out of this mess of a 2025 season.
There are a lot of people making that case. And, in the past, I've made those types of cases myself at different points in time. I actually made that case after the 2016 season, and they made the postseason in 2017. So what do I know?
I mean, it's different, right, with expiring contracts. Like, I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but did they have a lot of expiring guys in 2016?
They had a couple. And then my point then was they had guys also that had more than 1 year of control left, and they could really get quite a haul. But the point here, circling back to that, is all of these guys are 2+ month rentals, and whoever they trade and whatever they get back, many people are going to be underwhelmed and downright pissed off.
Yeah,
they just are, because they may not have a full grasp of what the market is. I mean, you just don't get frontline top 1, 2, 3 prospects for 2-month rental players. Almost never. And the teams that do that, end up in a really bad situation down the road. So almost nobody does it anymore.
The other part of this conversation that I think is worth having, now that the D-backs are very likely going to sell at the deadline, is just the fact that Mike Hazen's track record in this regard, Jack, is not particularly good. And I don't think it's fair to harp on this too much, because the Diamondbacks haven't sold all that much under Mike Hazen, and at least not to the degree that they could this year. And when they have sold, they haven't had all that attractive pieces. The pieces they've been trading are not like they've never traded a Zac Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Geno Suárez type player at this time of year. So I think this is different. However, it's worth noting that the few times the D-backs have gone this route in the past, it hasn't worked out very well for them. You think back to the Zack Greinke trade in 2019, obviously a bit of a different situation in that Greinke still had a couple years left, and there was the big contract, and they wanted to get off that contract, and it was certainly going to diminish what they could get back. But you look back at what they got in that trade with Josh Rojas and Corbin Martin and JB Bukowskis, Seth Beer, they didn't come away with a whole lot of value there. And some of the smaller moves, when they traded Robbie Ray, granted he was not having a good season at all, but they've made a lot of these types of moves, Jack, where they got one or two pieces back and they wound up designating for that player for assignment shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and again, like you said, the pieces. I mean, Greinke was a great pitcher who was having a good season when he was traded, but
Right.
they owed, I don't know, $80 million or something. It was crazy money still at that point. So that you can't really compare that to anything. Robbie Ray, what was his ERA when he was traded? Like 10?
Yeah. Yeah, he had like a walk per inning at that point. So even though, it's easy to look at the fact that he came back the next year and won the Cy Young, that he didn't exactly look like that type of guy when they traded him.
Yeah, which is another whole can of worms.
That's fair. Yeah. So I guess the other thing I'll mention real quick from this Bob Nightingale story is he does mention that the Seattle Mariners, after trading Geno Suárez to the Diamondbacks in November of 2023, he said that the Mariners would love to have Geno back this year and that they have interest in Josh Naylor as well. And Jack, it already feels so inevitable. If there's a place where you can bet on a Diamondbacks Mariners trade happening at the deadline, you feel like you'd like your odds in that situation, because these teams have quite a bit of history, and I think their needs kind of line up as well.
Whenever their needs line up, then Mike Hazen will bring in his inner Jerry DiPoto spirit animal, like this Trader Jerry.
They always make such fascinating trades too. I mean, the Paul Sewald one, for example, was not a normal acquire or reliever at the deadline kind of thing. The D-backs traded off their major league team. There were some close to major league ready players as well in that deal. Dominic Canzone, of course, with Ryan Bliss. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things unfold. We'll, of course, be tracking all of the storylines that come out regarding this. But this is really the first show where I think we've had a very clear direction about what the Diamondbacks are doing. Like, it is hard. I mean, I guess if they won out, Jack, if they came back after the deadline and won every single game, maybe there's a path there. But this team, the way it's playing right now, after dropping 2 of 3 to the Angels, that feels a little far-fetched right now.
Well, we can address that with math. There's 12 games left between now and July 31st.
Yeah.
Right? And they can't just decide on July 31st, oh, you know what, I think we'll buy after all. Right? It doesn't work that way. It takes days to go back and forth and figure it out. I mean, they have to know a week before the deadline for sure what they're doing. So how many games do they really have up until July 24th? Right? It's a handful of games, maybe 5. They got 5 games to figure it. Now, if they went on a 5-game winning streak, maybe that changes Mike's mind. It's possible.
Yeah.
Now, could they go on a 5-game winning streak? I'll believe it when I see it, just based on the way this team has played, and pitched and, inconsistent with the bats in the month of July. So, all of that. But hey, maybe they come out and they win 5 straight and Mike pivots. That's a non-zero chance, but it ain't much above 0.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'll take a look at the standings real quick, just so you all have an idea of where the Diamondbacks sit right now. They are 5.5 games out of that third wildcard spot. The Reds, Cardinals, and Giants all still standing between them and that third wildcard spot as of right now. So, yeah, I mean, you win 12 in a row and you're 59-50 on the day of the trade deadline. So I will say, Jack, that the moment you think this Diamondbacks team is out, as I've said before, they do have a way of like, oh, maybe they're not done yet. I'm not really expecting that at this point, but you can never fully rule it out with this team. Well, the MLB Draft was started as the day that we're recording this here on Sunday night, and the Diamondbacks took a few interesting players that we are going to talk about. We'll do that right after this break. Nothing says summer like long days, clutch plays, and firing off a few bets on the game, all with DraftKings Sportsbook. If you've never bet on baseball before, it's easy. Pick a guy to go yard, hammer some live odds mid-game, or just ride with your squad and hope for the best. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario, new customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Well, with the Diamondbacks' first-round pick in the 2025 draft, they did not take an undersized left-handed hitting outfielder, but they did take a undersized left-handed hitting infielder. Very on brand here, Jack, as the Diamondbacks take Kayson Cunningham, a high school shortstop out of the state of Texas at number 18.
Yeah, the great news here with Cunningham is that he's pretty much hands down considered the best hitter amongst the shortstop class. And how many picks did they get? It was through 17 before the first non-shortstop position player was taken. 17 or 8 beyond the Diamondbacks, I think it was. So, there's a lot of shortstops taken, a lot of shortstops on the board, and this one was considered the best hitter of all of them. So that's pretty exciting.
I loved reading what Keith Law wrote at The Athletic about Cunningham before the draft happened. He wrote, Cunningham is listed at 5'10", but he's shorter than that, maybe 5'8", which is also going to take a lot of teams out of the running, except Arizona. And then the quote continues from there. So Keith Law clearly knew very well about the Diamondbacks' history taking undersized position players, and they did it once again here. I think there's a lot to like about someone like Kayson Cunningham. He, of course, plays an up-the-middle position. It remains to be seen whether he'll be able to stick there. It seems like there's some split reviews on his defense, a decent number of people thinking that he'll transition over to second base. It is inevitable that on draft day, teams and the player themselves will always say, no, I view myself as this. We view this player as the position that we're drafting them at, but we're not going to know the answer to that for several years. It's hard to say at this point.
Exactly. Which is fine. If he hits as good as everybody thinks and he can stick at shortstop, then, it's a real win. I mean, as a high school player. So, right around the time that he's totally ready for Major League Baseball, Geraldo Perdomo's contract extension will be nearing the end. And there are a number of players before him. They seem to have taken quite a lot of shortstops since 2021. But it's okay. Your best players are generally in the middle of the diamond at shortstop. And so you can move one to second base or third base or center field if you do it at the right time and in the right way. So, get the best athlete, get the best player, guys that can hit, and then you find the right place for them to play.
There was a fun anecdote that Kayson Cunningham shared with the media in a Zoom with all of us just a few minutes before we hopped on here. The Diamondbacks, during his workout, gave him an opportunity to warm up with the batting cages, and they were showing him the traject machine that they have out there. And the way Ian Rebhan described it is they weren't necessarily going to have Cunningham use the traject. He was just warming up before hitting on the field, but he saw it and was like, hey, can I try this thing? And the Diamondbacks allowed him to try it. And so he was then asked, who do you want to hit against? The way a traject works is it imitates an actual major league pitcher. And so, of course, he said Paul Skenes. And it was a pretty fun anecdote. Here is Kayson himself telling that story.
Yeah, I did. I went to a workout with the Diamondbacks in June, and they had a simulator, and I asked to hit off Paul Skenes. And I had some good at bats off of Paul Skenes.
I heard you took him deep. Is that correct?
Yeah, I actually did. I did take him deep. It was sitting fastball.
What was the reaction from the D-backs when you did something like that?
Their mouths were like, "Oh my gosh!" I had like 114 exit velo, I think. So they were pretty. They didn't really know what to say, honestly.
Do you think that's the reason they drafted you?
Could have been. I mean, I could have been. Also, just I had a really good senior year, but they kind of already knew what I had, and I think that kind of opened their mouths a little bit even more.
That's a pretty sick story, Jack. You can't help but smile hearing him tell that one.
Yeah, the young man lacks zero. He has no lack of confidence. He's extremely uh, knowledgeable about his own skills and abilities. So, he's got the mindset. It's kind of the coolest thing about the anecdote is he wants to face the best. Let me
Yeah.
go up against the best and let me see what I can do against the best. Now, it's a simulator, but it's a pretty cool machine, right? I mean, the image of the pitcher and his exact delivery comes out. They can program it to throw the same velocity and the same kind of movement and location. It's a pretty advanced machine that they have, and it allows hitters to really get a good look at what they're going to see when they actually face a pitcher. So it's just a very cool story. I think that, obviously we asked Ian Rebhan, how much this weighed, and he laughed a little bit, and he said, well, it didn't hurt.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, clearly that they didn't draft him because he hit the ball 114 miles per hour off a simulator machine that happened to have Paul Skenes' image on it. But this is the guy that Ian Rebhan wanted. I mean, and the player just alluded to that, right? He was talking about how they had visited him and worked with him, and he knew that the D-backs were on him.
I think it speaks a lot to just his personality, right? That he's a gamer. He just loves the game of baseball. He's one of the fewer highly ranked draft picks who actually showed up at the MLB Combine event. We don't necessarily see a lot of the top flight guys attend, and he was out there. So yeah, I mean, certainly it's a fun story, and I don't think you're gonna draft a player based on one plate appearance against a computer simulation of a pitcher, basically. But couldn't hurt, as Ian said. And speaking of Ian, it was very clear the Diamondbacks were excited to see Kayson Cunningham fall to him. Most of the publicly available draft rankings had him somewhere between number 12 and number 14. I think ESPN had him at number 25, but most of them had him going earlier than number 18, where the Diamondbacks picked. You can hear in Ian Rebhan's voice, the Diamondbacks amateur scouting director, that he was very happy this worked out the way it did.
I think, I can say confidently we are all extremely happy that Kayson Cunningham is a Diamondback. Yes. I got my steps in today, I guess. I'll say that pace in there waiting for that one. So yes, we are extremely happy that he got to our pick, and it couldn't be more thrilled. I mean, the kid, the family, the baseball player, it's all awesome. And bringing him into this organization is like supreme. Yes. Super happy.
Yeah. The setup on that was, I had asked Ian if I was out over our skis, because when we wrote about that pick on Arizona Diamondbacks on SI, we said that he was a steal at number 18, based on, I'd seen him ranked 12th and 14th and clearly the best shortstop bat. Prior to that clip that we just played of Ian, he had talked a little bit about how extremely happy they were to get him where they got him. He kept emphasizing that, and he almost looked giddy about it. And as you can see from that clip that we just watched, just this image of Ian pacing back and forth, waiting to see if this player was going to drop to him. We've all been there in our fantasy drafts. This is for real. So you can imagine what the tension was like for him.
We have one more clip of Ian to share. Jack, I'll have you tee this one up. This was a question you asked about the Diamondbacks. This trend that we've noticed over the years of this team taking undersized position players over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, he was asked a lot about that during the talk today, and after lots of discussion about it, I kind of worked with him to try to summarize it, and I'm like, I think it sounds to me like what's going on here is simply you're not dinging small players for being small. It's almost like you don't factor it. Other teams may be wanting to draft all these 6'2" guys, and they're going to downgrade guys that are 5'10" or 5'9" or 5'8". And for you guys, it's all about the skill set, and you don't care if they're short or not. It's not that you're seeking the short guys, but they keep falling to you because other teams are dinging them for being short. So that was my question: is that what's happening? Here was his response.
Yeah, I could agree with that. Like, again, I think it just comes down to identifying tools and how they impact the game, right? And I think you watch Corbin Carroll and Alec Thomas and Slade Caldwell and these guys that you guys are referencing, like they play defense, they're super athletic, they stay in the middle of the field, they make a ton of contact, they control the strike zone, and they have power. And I think when you combine that up, it's a really, really good player.
Well, Cunningham, of course, is not the only player the Diamondbacks selected on Sunday night, the first night of the draft. We also want to talk about their two other picks. The first one was Patrick Forbes, a right-handed pitcher out of Louisville at number 29. He is listed at 6'3", 220 pounds, a guy who has not spent a whole lot of time as a pitcher. Diamondbacks drafted him, or did not draft him, scouted him as a position player previously. This is a transition that he's made recently to being a pitcher full time. And he was pretty impressive this past season, Jack. And the Diamondbacks, they see someone here could potentially stick as a starter and has a 4-pitch mix that maybe could play in the big league someday.
Yeah, and just to clarify the 4-pitch mix, if you happen to be reading scouting reports online, and even something I wrote that I need to go back and correct, he's been discussed as a guy that has two different shapes to his slider, but actually it's a cutter. And
Sure.
Basically it's a cutter and a sweeper. So he's got a cutter and a slider / sweeper. He's got a changeup along with his, fastball. So that's something that I thought was important to highlight, that he actually does have a 4-pitch mix. Now, whether or not the other two pitches, or the cutter and the changeup, are strong enough pitches to allow him to maintain being a starting pitcher remains to be seen. He was a reliever in 23 and 24. 23 was mostly a position player. 25 was the first year as a full-time starter. He did have a flexor tendon issue earlier in the year, but he did finish out the season. He just wasn't quite as effective, and he did have some control problems. But this is a guy that they should be able to work with. Hey, it's a power righty.
Yeah, which is something the Diamondbacks just have never had a whole lot of. And something that stands out to me is the D-backs have not had a whole lot of success developing young starting pitchers. Not at all. It's been a big topic of conversation, but one guy who has had some success is Ryan Nelson. And what sets Ryan Nelson apart? He has a power fastball with really good life, and it's basically made it so that even though his secondary pitches, none of those are elite, he's able to get by just throwing this fastball because other teams really struggle to hit it. And I think Patrick Forbes could be in a similar category there, where he has a fastball that's 94 to 96, has been seen up at 100 miles per hour. He can lean on that pitch potentially in the major leagues is something that will really keep hitters off balance most of the time. And it's just a matter of trying to build enough around that. Seems like the slider has already developed into a pretty good, compelling pitch for him. The multiple shapes and the changeup, those are a little bit more to be determined. I do think it's interesting, Jack, that he actually had a 4.42 ERA this past year, which I know you're playing against pretty good competition. So you're not expecting him to have, an ERA of 1 or something like that in college. But he was a guy who struck out a ton of hitters. It was 14.8 Ks per 9. He walked maybe a few more than you'd like at 4.3 per 9. And he was a little more hittable than I think you would have expected given the arsenal that we're describing.
Yeah, and that probably goes back to the control and the command, right? I mean, if you keep falling behind guys, you come in the zone, and good hitters are still going to hit you. So, if he's able to refine his mechanics and, drop that walk rate, and we've heard that before, but that's what it's all about, right? I mean, if you got guys that throw the ball really hard, the ones that are able to dial it in and start throwing strikes more regularly, like Ryan Nelson, those are the ones that become successful. So that's what he's got to work on.
The D-backs had a pretty long gap after picking Patrick Forbes at number 29. They lost their second round draft pick because they traded it to the Cleveland Guardians. I guess that was technically a competitive balance pick. And then I guess, how did they lose their second round pick, Jack? I'm trying to remember this.
Signing Corbin Burns.
Okay, thank you. So they lost the second round pick because of signing Corbin Burns, and then they lost a competitive balance pick because they traded it to the Guardians as part of the Josh Naylor trade. So after picking at 29, they didn't pick again until number 93 in the third round, and there they took a, once again, undersized right-handed pitcher in Brian Curley out of Georgia. So another college starting pitcher, someone who's faced some pretty decent competition. Curley spent most of the season, or at least started the season, with Georgia as their closer. And then shortly thereafter, he transitioned to being a starter. And by the end of the year, he was their number one starting pitcher. Really made some impressive strides there. It seems like, though, Jack, reading some scouting reports on Curley, a lot of people expect this guy to wind up in the bullpen.
A lot of people seem to think that, but I mean, he looks like he's got a 3-4 pitch mix. So, let's ride it out. Just because there's been plenty of short starters out there that have been successful. The scout grades on his secondaries are pretty good. It's not just about fastballs with him. So
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I think, he reads like a pretty underrated guy, actually, to me. So I'm very intrigued here.
The rankings for him are kind of all over the place. The Athletic didn't have him in their top 100. MLB Pipeline had him at 102. ESPN had him at 91. That was the highest that I could find. And I haven't seen this with my own eyes, but someone mentioned during a press interview with Ian Rebhan that he actually was in the 200s, like the mid 200s for Baseball America. So people are pretty split on him, and I guess it makes sense when you factor in that he's listed at 5'10", 212, and it is possible. We do have some shorter starting pitchers, no doubt. There's a number of them that have been very successful, especially as right-handers. But there's always going to be skepticism. Is a guy going to have the durability to stay in the rotation long term if they're undersized like he is?
Well, that's okay. You got to save some money somewhere, right? I mean, they're probably going to be looking, from rounds 11 through 20. If you go over $150,000, it counts against your cap space. The Diamondbacks have a $10.8 or $10.9 million for their bonus pool.
Yeah.
And that if you exceed that by more than 5%, you start losing draft picks. From 0 to 5%, it's a 75% penalty. So, they got to save some money here and there, and this may be a pick where they can save a little bit of money because of where he was expected to be taken.
The last thing I'll say on him is that it can almost be a positive at times if a guy is developed fairly early as a reliever. I think there's at least some potential that Curley could be a reliever with the Diamondbacks in the relatively near future. If you're just projecting out how long will it take, it wouldn't shock me if we saw Brian Curley in the big leagues before we saw Patrick Forbes or Kayson Cunningham. If he comes up as a reliever, the path there just isn't as long, and he's already had some success doing this at a reasonably high level in college. So that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. There's a whole lot more MLB Draft to come. They'll have a whole lot more of this happening on Monday. So we'll maybe not talk about every player in this much detail. That would take many hours, but we'll be sure to highlight some things in our next episode, or some episode in this next week for sure. But that is all that we have for this edition of Snakes Territory. We really appreciate all of you being here with us. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Drop a like on this video. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought of the D-backs draft selections, some of the selling conversations that we had earlier, all of those things. We would love to hear from you. You can find us over on social media. I am at Jesse N. Friedman on Twitter. Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. Jack, anything else before we say goodbye?
Just wishing everybody a happy All-Star break, and hopefully Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll and of course Eugenio Suárez come out of it safe and sound. That's all I care about.
Yeah, that is a great point. Given what's happened this season for this team, you might just want to bubble wrap all those guys going into that. So certainly hope for the best there. Well, thank you all once again for being with us on this episode. We really appreciate your time, and we'll be back with another edition of Snakes Territory very, very soon.